welcome back from lunch, déjeuner, as they say in French, I believe. Is that right? Did I say that right? Déjeuner? Le petit déjeuner is breakfast. The déjeuner is lunch. I went to Paris. I had a layover in Paris, and I had like 4 hours between my flight landing and taking a train to Frankfurt. So I took like the subway or whatever they call it, the metro, into Paris, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get some bread and cheese and wine and do Paris. So I went into the shop. I took 2 years of French in high school and 2 years of French in college. So I kind of knew some French, and I'd been practicing a little bit. So I went in and I ordered wine and cheese and bread in French, and was replied back to in English. So it's like, clearly my French sucks, but it's better than my Norwegian for sure. So, yeah. So welcome back. We are on the home stretch. How many people are feeling like their brains are really full? Cool. How many people are worried about how you're actually going to implement all of these ideas? Okay. No worries. Yeah, Anne's like, I'm good. One to my right, one to my left. I'm taking the rest of the weekend off. I'm surprised you're still here.
I know, me too.
Yeah. Don't worry about that. So in the last part of our time together today, we're going to work on building you a plan, and I'll give you some really, really specific strategies to help you implement what's here. So don't worry about that too much. Just keep collecting ideas, hoard them, write them all down, and then we'll talk about implementation later. Super, super excited to have you all come back because we have a very special guest with us, Jen Spencer. So Jen is the Director of Sales, VP of Sales at SmartBug. And marketing, VP of Sales, Marketing, and all things revenue at SmartBug. And so I met Jen a couple of years ago at the SaaStr conference. Anybody been to SaaStr? SaaStr event? Cool little conference. Now it's like 10,000 people. Used to be a cool little conference. Now it's like huge. And I met her because she was with Inbound, or Allbound at the time, and she was working the booth with her co-founder. I was like, oh, I want to check out this company. We started chatting. I'm like, oh, she's really smart. I want to keep in touch with her. And so we kept in touch, and then I had her on the podcast about a year and a half, maybe more than a year and a half, where she talked about partnerships and the importance of partnerships. And so we've continued to stay in touch as she's moved away from Allbound and now is at SmartBug. And I was thinking through how do we deliver the best tactical advice for you to fill the top of the funnel, and she came top of mind. So I called her up and said, hey, what do you think? Will you come help us out? She said yes, and here we are. So with no further ado, we have Jen Spencer, who's going to talk to you about buyer personas. Let's give some love to Jen. 3, 2, 1.
Awesome. Thank you. I actually started my career as a high school English and theater teacher. So I'm totally digging the fact that the space we're in right now. I've had the opportunity to conduct workshops at a couple of really interesting venues. One of them is like a really old church in San Diego, which was kind of strange. And then the other one was Lambeau Field. Lambeau Field. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. So, but this is really cool too. I feel weird standing in front of myself here. But yeah, I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing at SmartBug Media. So SmartBug's an intelligent inbound marketing agency. If you're familiar with HubSpot technology, we're a HubSpot Diamond partner. And when most people come to work with us, usually they've been practicing inbound at a certain level, and then they're really ready to scale. So when you think about an organization going from like 5 million to 50 million in revenue, that's typically where they would bring us in to really help. I used to be a client of SmartBug. So the first time I hired SmartBug, I was hired to actually build a direct sales engine for NetTime Solutions, a time and attendance software company in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it was one of those golden opportunities as a marketer where the CEO's like, I have $1 million and I want to spend it on sales and marketing, and I want you to tell me how to do it. I'm like, okay, well, let's do this. And so we went from, we built an inbound marketing strategy, and the only thing I hired SmartBug to do was build us a new website, build up the team, and decided, okay, like let's do this. And we went from feeding 4 sales reps with inbound leads to 20. And then Paychex came knocking on our door, went through acquisition. I got a taste of what that felt like. That was pretty nice. And worked for Paychex for a year. 6 months in, I was like, I do not belong at a big company at all. And then met Scott Salkin, who's the founder of Allbound, which is like a channel technology platform for people who sell through partnerships. And I was like, let's do this. Like, I'm in again. But that time, we're really starting from scratch. There was no $1 million bank account. It was totally ground zero. But grew the first $2 million in revenue just on inbound marketing. And that time is when we decided to hire an agency because I didn't want to deal with people. To be totally honest, like I wanted to like be able to execute, and I didn't want to deal with like people having sick days and human things. So that was the route that we went that time. So like what else can I tell you? So after I was a teacher, I actually went to work for a nonprofit professional theater company. So I started there in education and then moved into PR, marketing. By the time I left, I was running all sales and marketing, responsible for all of our earned revenue. And it's B2C, but selling subscriptions to plays that have not been like written yet was really, and at a nonprofit, was really good training ground for startup software. Very good training ground. And then the last thing I'll tell you just about my background that I think is an interesting takeaway, the fact that I was a teacher has helped me in every aspect of my career. So as you're thinking about salespeople that you want to hire, all I know is the hardest sales job I ever had was teaching a 15-year-old boy why Shakespeare was important in his life. So if you can do that, I feel like you can sell anything. So what I want to share is briefly like our story at Allbound, kind of how we went to the first million in ARR, because, and I say like, I've interchangeably said like 1 million ARR, $2 million in revenue, because we did sell some services revenue. So, but the first like true million in ARR. And then my goal is to kind of unpack it and then help guide you guys through some of the like basic tenets of what we did. So again, very little money. When I first started, we didn't have funding, and then we got this seed funding of $1 million, which seemed like it was like so much money, and then you realize it's like nothing. It was a very, very MVP product. So like I did not do my due diligence when I joined the team in recognizing that like there was literally no product. Like we had like clickable PowerPoint, okay? And like lots of like flair using like things like InVision. And I was hired originally to do marketing. Like Scott was like, hey, Scott Salkin at CEO, he was like, come on, be on the founding team. We want you to run marketing. And then I showed up like day one, and he's like, and sales. So yeah, so then I said, all right, well, I started selling by day and marketing by night. So I literally didn't sleep, right? Like barely. You guys know what that's like. But it was really powerful to actually live in both roles at the same time, because every lead that I generated, I was able to make the adjustments of like, okay, what is actually qualified or what is not? And my MQLs and my SQLs just became kind of one. They were just like Gen QLs, right? I just made that up. Okay, so super laggard playground. So Allbound, what we were trying to do was actually create a whole new, category. If you don't have to create a whole new category, don't do it. It's really, really hard. So it's funny now that I've left, they actually went and they're like selling, positioning it as PRM, as partner relationship management software. But we were like, no, I was told, absolutely not, you cannot call it PRM. I'm like, are you kidding me? So we had to we called it partner sales acceleration software. So it's like, how do we have to try to build a whole new category? And we were selling to people and marketing to people who were, they're the kind of people you're like, oh my gosh, you have so much pain in your life. Like you're literally like hemorrhaging and you think it's normal and I can help you and I can show you how things can be better. But to them, they're like, whatever, this is just my life, right? Like I'm just used to this feeling. And the other thing was that the person that we were selling to really didn't have a seat at the executive table. So like zero authority, zero budget, a fancy title, but at the end of the day, not important in the organization. So it was a really tough sale. And yeah, I think that's pretty.
Set the stage pretty damn well there.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar to anybody in this room?
So yeah, and I survived. Look at that. All right. So where did I start? The first place I started was I had to figure out who our personas are. Who are the actual individual people who I want to attract to our website, who I want them to request a demo, and I want to actually sell something to them. And we identified these three personas. Now, in the beginning, there were no customers, so there was no one for me to actually interview, which is the ideal state, right? You actually interview your customers. But instead, I had to go ask our founder, okay, who are you building this for? Where did this idea come from? And then he knew people, and we did a couple of market research surveys. I say market research. I'm just Survey Monkey, really low budget kind of scenarios. And leverage relationships that we had in the community and with our VCs, so that we could try to figure out who this person was that we were selling to. Something I'll note is the first three personas we started with, 6 months later, we changed them a little bit, right? So that's very, very normal. What I find when I talk to marketers is they're afraid to admit that they got their persona wrong, and so they just kind of keep chugging along. That's the worst thing you can do. So, I just said, okay, now that we have X amount of data, now we know that this is actually we're going to tweak this persona a little bit, and this is why. And being very transparent about that was really helpful in getting everybody on the team kind of aligned with those personas. So we had Abby, Mike, and Sean. I believe in giving your personas an actual name and a face. We actually printed these out with our crappy printer, and we had pictures of them on the walls. I mean, there was you guys, it's 4 people staring at each other all day, right? We had one free office space. So we had this, otherwise we would have been, I don't even know where. And we talked about them. And we talked about these people so much that it was so great, because if I got off of a sales call, I could say, I was talking to a Sean, and these are the concerns that he had. And then the director of product could be like, oh, okay, I think I know how we can address that with the product. And it became this common language. And there was synergy, and the personas didn't just live and die within the walls of the marketing office. There was no marketing office. So once we had those personas, we started just building tons and tons of content, tons of awareness stage content for top of funnel. And I'll share with you some of the recommendations I have for getting content out, but we just look for ways to actually speak to the pains that those three personas were experiencing, and try to publish a minimum of twice a week. So by publishing a minimum of twice a week, we were consistently hitting Google, and people were starting to find us. Now remember, it was a very laggard kind of playground. All of our competitors, they weren't doing anything innovative. They're all more door knocking salespeople. And so we started to really, really, really stand out. And we had to make the most of that competitive advantage that we had. We had that pretty short runway. The other thing that we did to make ourselves kind of look and feel bigger is we developed this cadence for sharing. So this is literally what we did. We would publish the blog, and we would share it via the company social accounts. Then at this stage, I did have a community, we called her a community manager, a marketing manager, all people kind of person, right? So she would draft the social messages, identify the hashtags that were going to give us the most traction, and then would literally send an email out every day of here's all your lazy tweets and social posts to promote. And so we took advantage of the few people that we had, and we started making a lot of noise online and on social. Then 2 weeks later, we would have that blog author actually partial publish the blog. Our strategy was to partial publish it on LinkedIn. So basically, the first 2 paragraphs of the blog with a link, click here to read more, send people back to our site, right? Because we wanted people back on our site so we could convert them into a lead. And then a week later, we had the authors share the blog on inbound.org, which no longer exists. It's now growth.org. But that was relevant to us only because one of our buyer personas spent a lot of time on that site, and we knew that through customer interviews. Then 2 weeks after that, the blog was imported to a Medium publication. So we set up a whole other Medium publication so that we had this other channel for amplification. We made a mistake at first. We didn't import the content. We actually just like copied and pasted it. That was bad because we cannibalized on our own website traffic. So don't do that. Instead, and Medium had an import feature that was hidden, and now it's not as hidden, so it's a little bit of us and them. But you can import it and then post it to a publication. You also need to make sure, if you do this, that all of your authors, the blog authors, have individual Medium profile, like Medium accounts and profiles, so it's tied to that human being. And then the community manager would publish it. So we were doing this, and I'm telling you, doing this, blogging twice a week, people thought we were a 50, 100, 500 person company, and there were 5 of us. The other thing is, I'm like a crazy, oh yeah?
When was this again? What was the timing of this? And is this like, do you feel like this is still relevant in today's?
Like to do something like this? Yes, so I can translate this now back to being at a marketing agency with 65 people and what we do. So we do step 1, we do step 2, we have a software platform called Gaggle Amp that we use that makes it a lot easier for kind of promotion and tracking, and that connects to HubSpot, so we can actually show our team, hey, you people on our team, you contributed to X amount of revenue in our organization because of clicking this button, right? Because there were times where things got really busy, and like all of a sudden it's like the product team was just like heads down, and they're like, I don't have time to tweet, I don't have time to do this or whatever. And then I would go into one of our monthly status meetings and say, okay, guess what, you guys, like our lead volume dropped by X amount, and therefore our opportunities dropped by this amount, and the correlation that I have is that we all stopped sharing because we had this new feature launch. So I get the feature launch is important, but can I have your commitment to actually keeping this up, because this is the impact it has on pipeline. And since everybody in the organization had equity, everyone's like, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna make sure we do this. So we do that. We don't do the LinkedIn piece. We actually go right to Medium for what we do now. I'm still a little bit like, I'm not sure about the link. I don't know. I think you can try it, you know.
Yeah, I have a question. You brought up a very interesting point, which is go when they're reading the blog.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a mechanism to find out like where they read the blog, or is it just survey the customer? You see what I'm saying?
Like where they go looking for information?
Looking for information.
Yeah, that's what you'll do in persona interviews, and we'll actually get into that. I have a template for it, but you know, I mean,
There isn't a place, a site where you can look that up.
No, I know everyone wants to like hack it. It's like sometimes it's just having a conversation. You think about, I'm sure everyone in this room can think about like maybe 5 customers who you're like, oh my gosh, if I had 5,000 of just that customer, like my life would be perfect. Talk to those 5 customers and learn as much as you can about their psyche and the way that they operate, and it will. That's how this works. Yeah.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. So right now, so I'm in the video marketing space, video content marketing space. If someone types the word UGVC, which is user-generated video content, video on Google, today we're coming up number 1, obviously on the page. So we do a lot of blogging and stuff. My question is, it is only good as what you type.
Yep.
So educating someone to connect the word UGVC with our business. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how do you get someone like, or is it just you
Can we take, is that a question for everyone, or is that a question?
Yeah, either that's fine.
Maybe we can come back to that.
Whatever.
Is that okay?
It's a very specific
Yeah.
question.
I'm gonna answer.
Okay, maybe you guys can talk to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to just make sure we keep going through.
So, thank you. Yeah, and this will all kind of come around. Like,
Yeah.
we'll get there. Okay.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Okay, so we repurposed everything, and I will say though, confidence is a big part of like having marketing success because I had gone through the successful acquisition, like we'd done it and it was like, and it worked. I was really like gutsy with Allbound because I was like, whatever, like we just got acquired by Paychex. I can do this, right? But you need to have a little bit of that, I think, and not be afraid. So I believe in like just the ROI of like everything. Like if we actually take the time, someone actually sits down and spends like 4 hours working on a blog post, we better get as much out of it as humanly possible. And so we looked at, again, where are the places and spaces where our personas are, and our persona, Abby, she spent a lot of time on Instagram. So we're like, great, what can we do with that? And we had an intern, college intern, who used Canva to create these graphics that grabbed just like one kind of phrase from blog posts, and then we were kind of linking to them. So, I mean, this got to be so popular, we started making stickers for them and having like a contest, and it was just like this one extra step, because we already did the hard work, which was actually writing the content. What happened was, and this was really critical, I think, to kind of the big success we got, is we started attracting these co-marketing partnerships. So it was funny, like companies that were way bigger than us could not produce the amount of content that we were doing. We were used to being scrappy. We were used to just like, knocking things out while you're on a train, right? And so because of that, all of these other companies that had much larger audiences wanted to work with us because they wanted our creativity. And they didn't have the capacity to do it themselves, but they had the audience. And so instead of doing a webinar just by ourselves, we did a webinar with Optimizely. And then we took that webinar with Optimizely, that content, and we converted it. We hired a freelance writer and converted that into an ebook. And now we have a piece of downloadable content that we're able to place on our blog, and users were converting on our blog from that content. And we had Optimizely sharing it on social media. Same goes for all these other organizations. These companies were kind of our initial co-marketing partners, and they all came to us. Like, I didn't even think about it. Like, they came to us. I did not try to plan for it. And the big thing was just going, do we share a buyer persona in common? If we share the buyer persona in common, and like value-wise, energy-wise, we were kind of spunky and stuff, like do we blend from like a cultural perspective? So those were the two factors. So there were people we turned away because it wasn't going to work for us, and we only have so many hours in the day. What happened was we generated, am I allowed to curse? Fuck no. Okay. We generated a shit ton of leads, like absolutely flooded, to the point where my SDR was like, I can't keep up with all the leads, right? And I wanted to put it on a coffee mug. But we so many leads. But we weren't getting that movement through the pipeline. It just wasn't, there was something that was just like jarring, that wasn't working. And what we did is we went back and reevaluated our personas and looked at them a little bit more critically, like kind of scrutinized them a little more. We're like, Abby's great, she loves us, but she has zero resources. Mike, he is always going to take us off course because he comes up with all these like brilliant ideas of how things can be better. And Sean just wants it. It's his way. So it became just like a mind game of like, how do we try to get Sean to think this is his idea, Seriously, that's what worked. So, and so we said we have underinvested. We recognized that we had underinvested in consideration and decision stage content. So we were doing a really good job of attracting people, but not actually getting them to start really analyzing like what they were missing and what kind of value we provided. So one thing we did, we paid a developer to create this ROI calculator. I don't know if I would do this again, just so you guys know, but we did this, and it worked for then, but today I don't know that I would do it. And then we worked with, people really love interactive stuff, right? So they want to play. So there's this little company in Arizona called Lead Quizzes. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of them, but it's exactly what it sounds like. You can create quizzes. So the quizzes that you see on on social media, you can make your own quizzes. And the beauty is start with your blog content, right? And then pull the questions kind of around that blog content. And then on that blog, you can place the quiz, they interact, and then it can zap right to whatever, CRM or whatever you're using. And then what other people do who actually need to we were using it from a conversion perspective, but when people are looking for like a top of funnel perspective, they actually put Facebook ad money behind this, and it will help them generate top of funnel leads. So that was something, and it's really cheap too. I don't know what they cost now, but it was like $5 a month or something. Like it was just like silly. They probably cost more now. And decision stage content. So as soon as we had a success story, like we went after it. We had good rapport with a customer. We're like, we have to start actually documenting these success stories. Does a case study help convince someone to buy your product? No, but it makes them feel better about their decision because we're emotional, but we want to pretend that we're actually really data driven, but actually at the end of the day, we are emotional decision makers. So it just provided people the reassurance that this was a good decision, especially to give their money to a company that, in all honesty, could not exist, right, in a month from then, right? Anything can happen in a startup. We learned we were still missing a message. Even though the CEO, the CFO, the CRO, depending on the company, wasn't involved in the process, didn't use the software, didn't want to be involved, right? We knew we had to try to reach these people. And what we discovered is CEOs care about speed, CFOs care about cost, CROs care about agility. And so we started thinking about the content we were creating and how we could start to insert messages that had to do with meeting these particular needs. Right now, were we expecting then that CFOs were going to start requesting demos of our software? No, and we didn't want that to happen. But we needed to have supporting documentation that was going to make it easier for our buyer persona to get funding. And that's when we started investing in some account-based marketing. So I think of ABM as being orchestrated inbound. I have a list of here are the people I want to meet, right? Because I've been able to identify that this is a good target audience for me. And then here are the people who I want them to be like, okay, I've heard of you. And so when we started implementing some ABM strategies, how that kind of materialized was a CFO sees ads about around the cost kind of pain, and he connects improving those cost pains with Allbound software because while he was playing Words with Friends, he saw one of our ads, right? So then when the VP of sales or VP of channel comes to the CFO's desks and says, hey, I want X amount of money for this and this is why, and builds the case, that CFO is like, feels better about it because like psychologically he's heard of the company before. So there's a lot of marketing that it's a bit of a mind game, but you have to start with who are you trying to target and what do they actually care about? And they don't care about those terms user-generated video content. That's not their pain. That's the solution. You have to actually write about their pain. Yep.
And this is a little more for Scott. Is that when we're identifying like our buyer personas?
Well,
What your one persona is kind of essentially your, let's say we're going after.
yeah, it's also. Yeah, I was going to pull in. What do we do with? We lost it. Mary Lou had the total addressable market and the total serviceable market. This is what Jen's talking about here. Is like when she says account-based marketing, it's like this is our serviceable market. Like who are the kinds of companies we want to go after? So if it's like 1,000 companies that are in your kind of mini universe, then that's where you can do the account-based marketing strategy. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Or no?
I think I'm going to get to it though. So then the next stage was actually setting up a partner channel. So the co-marketing partnerships were, all right, let's collaborate on this content together. But then we took it one step further and said, what entities have built amazing trust and great rapport with people who match our buyer persona? And how do we make it easy for them to add our product to their offering? That's like a win-win for both. And so we started working with marketing agencies. So finding it, like for example, SmartBag Media is an agency partner of Allbound. And when my sales team at SmartBag is on a call and we discover that they have a channel, and we ask, how are you supporting and enabling your channel partners from a marketing and sales enablement perspective, and they don't have something, then we register that deal with Allbound and we start collaborating on how we can come up with a solution together. So basically, if you're not sold on like actually selling through partners, I consider like the big icons, or that's your salesperson. This is your salesperson solo. This is what the salesperson looks like when they actually have a channel that they're selling through, because they have all these other individuals who are selling on their behalf as well, or referring them business.
How do you know when you're ready to do that?
When you have mastered everything from a direct perspective, unless it makes more sense to go through channel like 100%. So you might, I don't know your business, but some businesses are never going to be successful going direct to a buyer. It's going to make more sense to go through a reseller. For example, like an industrial like teeth whitening solution, like I'm going to trust my dentist to make the recommendation for me on what I want to use. And so that company is going to, they're going to sell through dental providers. It's all about how the buyer buys. How does the buyer want to buy?
And to maybe add on to that, to answer your question more, is like Mary Lou was saying earlier, when it comes, the question was like, when do I outsource my SDR work? After you master it, because if you don't know how to sell to your target market, how can you expect a partner to sell? That's where partnerships, a lot of times we sign paper, we're like, oh, we're partners, but then the partner doesn't sell or they do it poorly. They need a playbook that says, okay, this is what I do in order to sell to that customer. You're welcome.
So that was like the quick and dirty, like kind of our story and what we did, how we did it. So I want to kind of go back now and fill in some of the gaps. So a buyer persona, it's a semi-fictional representation of your target customer. So it's this picture that you paint based off of interviews that you have with actual human beings. Probably the biggest mistake I see now companies make is they talk to themselves, right? So I can think of one of our clients, they have an AI technology and their brand is so masculine and so technical, and they sell to a female, they sell to a mid-20s, early 30s female. And I'm like, you guys, and you look at their board, and this is why diversity on your teams is so important, because you look at who is in their organization, and they're all old white men, every single one of them. I'm like, they're like talking to themselves. So you really have to make sure that you're talking to your true target customer. It goes beyond basics of demographics. So other mistakes I'll hear people make is, we sell to a VP of sales at a $50 million organization, and that person makes $300,000 a year. That is not a buyer persona. You want to understand, buyer personas help you understand what kind of content is going to actually generate a response from people. How does that customer prefer to engage with you? Are they going to be one who wants to text message their sales rep, or is that going to really piss them off, right? And what problems do they need to solve, and how does your business help them? It is not about you, it is about them. Always, it is always about them. So you might go, all right, this is our buyer persona, and she's X age, and she went to college, and she has 3 people who report to her, and you might learn all of this key information about her. But if you're doing persona interviews really well, you're going to know things like she doesn't have a car, so she has to be able to make online purchases. She has disposable income, so she makes good money, right? But she is the kind of person who likes to get a good deal. She uses her phone more than her laptop. She'd rather talk to you via email than phone, and she uses social. So can you see how, if you knew this about your buyer persona, how that would influence where you spend your very limited time and resources? So what I want to do is help you guys build your personas. And if you've already built personas, I challenge you to grow them, okay, and improve upon them. Or if you're like a master, then help the person next to you.
Real quick, we're page 64. I forgot to mention that. Page 64.
So this is a template this is from SmartBug Media. So excuse the brand change. Orange isn't my brand. It just looked fun. But there's a template in there for you. I want to share with you an example. It's going to read like it's SmartBug's one of SmartBug's personas. It's actually not, but it's fine. But here's an example. Here's Eric. So we know he works for this publishing house. He's the director of marketing. He has a team of 6, right? He's got his degree in journalism. He spends his weekends making sure his kids attend their events on time. You might think, why is this important? It will be important. You have to understand this. You're selling to a human being who has a life and has responsibilities outside of his cubicle. We know general demographics, which are important, and we also know what kind of things he's going to respond to. Is he a very formal person? Is he an informal person? What kinds of topics does he respond to? If I track him, I could identify this is the kinds of questions he's asking on Quora, or these are the types of LinkedIn groups he's a part of. Understanding what are his goals, right? Both from what are the goals he's been given, but then what are his personal goals? Another example, one of our clients, all of a sudden, they were no more inbound, we got to go all in on ABM. And I started asking questions, and turns out the CMO used to be comped on the number of new leads that he generated, and now it's actual account penetration. I'm like, oh, this is tied to your compensation. So if you want to buy that boat that you've been talking about, this is why this change is important to you. So if you understand what it actually drives them at the end of the day, it's usually beyond what it actually exists in their business life. What are the most common pain points that Eric experiences? And then finally, how does your solution help him? So you can see it's not about you, it is 100% about them. The other thing I recommend when you're building out your personas is get actual quotes from your buyer personas. And one of the reasons this is going to be important is depending on the makeup of your team, there will be people, whether they're on your board or they're on your team, who are going to disagree. And they're going to swear that your persona research is wrong and that they know it better. Okay? That's where having actual quotes from customers is going to really, really help, because it's pretty darn hard to argue with that. And then what are the objections that this type of buyer typically is going to have, which you're going to get either from your sales leader or from yourself if you're actually doing the selling as well. Finally, company messaging. Identify what is the messaging that's going to speak to this particular persona. I do not believe you have to have one consistent message. I think you can have one overarching kind of value proposition, but you need to have messaging that's built for that persona specifically. And then actually write out your elevator pitch. Do it and make sure that everyone in your company knows the elevator pitch by persona. All right, so in the workbook, there are pages where you can actually go through this process. And what I would say is we'll do, I'm trying to be conscious of time and allow for questions.
Do what you need to do to get stuff done.
Okay. Well, let's actually, I'll kind of keep track of time and I'll kind of circulate around. But actually sit down with the workbook and start filling this in. Think about one of your personas, one of the types of people who you sell to. And you can start filling this out. If you don't know the answer, skip it and take it as a homework assignment to research it later.
Does anybody have any questions before we start? Are you guys all clear on what to do?
We actually created a CXO, so yes. Yes. Yeah, because they're very, they're very, very, very common. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take about 5 minutes to do this, okay? So I'll play some music and then we'll pick back up. Thank you. So great job. It sounds like you're making some good progress. I just want to make sure we keep moving forward on this. So.
All right, thank you. So this is a big exercise. So this is really just a taste. Under no circumstances is the expectation like, oh, you guys are done now, right? But hopefully your brains are, you're kind of like, you're processing a little bit and you've got some ideas. I know there's some teams who showed me kind of their personas and are making some adjustments. So once you have that persona template fully fleshed out for each one of your buyer personas, and you're likely going to have at least 2, if not 3 or 4, no more than 4. If you have more than 4 buyer personas, you are trying to reach too many people and you're going to dilute your resources.
How many?
4.
So the fewer the better. Because if you think about it, how many blogs are you prepared to write? Because if you have to write a blog that speaks to persona A and then one that speaks to persona B and C, if you want to have 10, you have more time in your life than I do. Yes?
I actually wanted to ask you this before. When you were creating that content machine before, about how much of your percentage of your resources were you spending allocating towards creating content?
So when we had no money, everyone on the team wrote. So it was just human capital. Yep, so this is where we are now. So content doesn't grow on trees, right? So what you need to do is actually develop an editorial calendar. Plan at least 3 to 4 months out. So you're probably not going to plan more than that, let's be honest, right? So 3 to 4 months out, at least a quarter out of what topics you're going to address. Work on a monthly or some kind of like bi-monthly theme. So for example, when I was at NetTime Solutions, we sold time and attendance, we'd have a theme that was all around increasing efficiency or productivity, or a theme around like a new legislation that was coming out that we knew was going to impact our personas, right? So think about an overarching theme that could be the umbrella of content that you're going to create. And then you're going to use your blog to create awareness stage content to introduce the concept that the person who's living their painful life right now, that they realize, oh, this is painful, and it doesn't have to be painful. You have to bring them to a state of awareness about the pain they're experiencing, and then drive those people, don't just publish the blog content, but drive them to some kind of an action. And that action is not a demo of your product. You have not earned the right to ask them for that. You have not earned the right yet to ask them for a sales conversation. You have to prove value to them. This is like we want things for free all the time. We're horrible as human beings. So what can you give them that's going to be value based? So drive them to an event like a webinar or some kind of a social gathering if you sell like in a regional kind of a space location, or drive them to a piece of high value content. And I say high value, what can you give your buyer persona? Thinking about the questions that you are answering about them, what can you provide them with that's going to make them look amazing in their organization? What can you give them that's going to teach them something that they cannot find anywhere else? So that is valuable enough for them to give you their highly coveted email address. So you can then begin to nurture them. And so that's more the consideration stage content. Map your content to your buyer's journey. So this is actually how we lay things out at SmartBug. So we look at like, all right, each week, what are we doing to attract visitors, to convert leads, and to close sales? And so some of this like nomenclature, it's all described up here. But it's important to, maybe you're not a spreadsheet person, maybe you're a Post-it note on the wall person. Whatever you do, you're likely, if you don't pay attention to who you're talking to and when and why, you're likely to have a favorite persona. Somebody that you personally feel really like connected with, and you feel like you can write to them very, very easily. So you run the risk of alienating some of your other personas because most of you are probably selling to some kind of a buying committee. And so there's not just one person making that decision. So this helps kind of keep you in check. So you're like, all right, who are we selling? Who are we writing for and why? So you can see here on an individual blog post, here's the blog post title, the keyword that we're targeting based off of the keyword research that we've done, what the call to action is going to be for that post, predetermine what it is, and make sure that it's aligned. Make sure that it makes sense. Think about like, I don't know, if I walked into, where I'm going right now, if I walked into a bar and it was a brewery and I went to the counter and then the person offered me a menu with a milkshake on it, like with all milkshakes on it, I'd be like, what? I came for beer. Why are you offering me milkshakes? So think about what the offer is that you're giving them to convert on the blog, who the persona is, what stage it's at, and then keep track of, are you publishing it? Well, if there's any internal approvals you have, right? If you're publishing it and if you're actually promoting it.
Jen, can you go back just one slide real quick? Yeah. So this maps really well to what Mary Lou was talking about earlier. Remember when she talked about the 8 to 10 email nurture? So you have people that are in your cold lead nurture, people that are in your working nurture, people that are your long-term follow-up nurture. This actually maps really well to that notion of, okay, some content is for people when you're just attracting and getting them into the pipeline. Others are when they're in the sales pipeline. What content are you going to feed them that's different than the content that you feed? And this is not something you're going to do on Tuesday and be done, right? I just want to give you these frameworks because it's important to think about it. Because a lot of you are spending time on content, and we just want to make sure you're directing those efforts in the right way. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And I think back
Yeah.
to
Question.
So attracting visitors is more of like more marketing content versus converting and closing is more of your like consideration stage and decision stage where it's more sales driven?
I would say it's still marketing content. So
But it could be like case studies versus.
yeah, it's like a case study at decision stage. So you think awareness is they don't realize they even have a pain or problem to solve and they're like, oh, I want to solve it. Consideration is now they're trying to figure out how do I want to solve this problem. It may not be buying your software, it might be hiring somebody, or it might be like working from home, or it might be like you're competing. You're not just competing with other technology at that point. You're competing with the world, right? Like who's the biggest competitor of live theater? Television, right? You compete more, right? So if you think about those things, that's what you're trying to get to in consideration. Decision is where you're talking about this product versus that product. That would definitely fall more in the realm of potentially like sales enablement type of content.
So what if, let's just play constraints here with limited resources. Hypothetically speaking, if people in the audience had limited resources of time and money, you're talking about attracting visitors, so people that are like in cold, just coming in nurture, or even some inbound. You have people that are in the funnel somewhere working or kind of active deals, and then you have people that are close. If we could only do one piece of content, we don't have the time and the capacity to do 8 pieces of content for each of those. What would be one piece of content that you'd recommend for people to attract, one piece of content for people that are kind of in the funnel, and one piece of content for people that are close to decision?
So like minimum viable, minimum thing you would do from a marketing perspective. Commit to writing a blog once a week for awareness, and then collaborate on one piece of consideration stage content that provides a lot of value.
Like what? Like an ebook?
Like an ebook, right? Like an ebook or some kind of story, or it could be a video, but probably more valuable, or like a workbook or a worksheet. People like tools. So is there something you can give them? Is there some kind of a template? Like think about this piece right here. If I wanted to, I could actually package this spreadsheet as a piece of consideration stage content.
Like if you look, just to flip real quick, page 40 in your workbook, this is something I included in our pre-call strategy, right? It's a simple worksheet that we put together, and it's called the Prospect Researcher. It's like, hey, you're going to go talk to somebody, or you're going to be in a meeting with somebody. Here's 3 people that are going to be in the meeting. Go to LinkedIn, check out conferences where they might have spoken, check them out in Google News, look for annual reports of those companies, and jot that down. we've used this for lead gen on LinkedIn. We're like, hey, you've got a meeting with prospects, check out this worksheet. It's going to help you prep for your meeting. And people are like, oh, I want that, cool. Click, download. Now they're in the marketing funnel. So something really simple like this, it took like 20 minutes to put together. And that's what she's talking about in terms of a tool.
And at Allbound, we had friction in actually implementation where our buyers, they weren't prepared to implement because they didn't have like all their ducks in a row. Well, our implementation team had like a list of here are like all the steps it takes to go from not using the software to it being really effective. And so we took it and we repackaged it as an offer. So now we're actually preparing people for a successful implementation during their buying and discovery process. So you've probably spent time creating systems and processes internally that would be, with a couple of tweaks, really, really valuable for your buyer personas.
When you're saying consideration stage content, is that the same as decision stage content? I'm just trying to...
It is not. So decision would be, I've decided I'm going to buy software that is going to help me solve this pain, and I'm going to go with software A or software B. So that would be your decision stage content. Your consideration is, I have a pain, I know I have a pain, I don't want to live in pain anymore, I need to figure out what the solution is going to be. And it may not be software at all.
Okay. And then awareness is like, oh, look, I have a problem, wow.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had a problem, right? Exactly.
Sometimes you do know, you're just looking, you want to, you're a
wanna see
marketer,
what's out
you
there.
want to learn about something, and then you realize this company has written a blog.
Right. And other people have this problem too, and I'm not weird, right? And it normalizes the pain they're experiencing, and they no longer feel like I'm doing a bad job. It's more like, oh no, this is something that's very common among my peers. And that might be something that matters to your persona. Maybe they're afraid to like raise their hand and say, I need help.
Permission to go on?
All right. So, what I'd like you guys to do is actually think about your buyer persona. Ideally, the one you guys were just brainstorming right now, right? But whatever you'd like to do, consider one of your buyer personas. Brainstorm what are 3 overarching themes that you could use. So this will help if you think about like a quarter's worth of content. 3 big themes that tie back to pain that your buyer experiences. How can you provide value? How can you teach them? How can you teach them something? So an example for us is we did a theme on inbound recruiting and using inbound marketing for recruiting talent. Our anchor event was the webinar, right? And we drove people to that webinar via blogs and stories about tactics for using inbound marketing to recruit talent. So if you think about it through that lens, so try to brainstorm 3 goals, and then share with your team or your partner to identify what that anchor event is going to be. A lot of you have content on your blogs already. I took a look, and none of you have consideration stage content. So you can even think about the content you already have. What themes can we pick up on, and what's that webinar event or that ebook going to cover? Any questions? Yes.
So the consideration content is only for those who are in that path. They're considering your solution?
No, they're considering being without the pain that they now realize they have.
They're considering whether or not to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So they don't even know that it might be you that can solve it or that your type can solve it.
Yeah, they have.
Pain, I solve this, I have to figure this out.
Yep, your theme that you have should have absolutely nothing to do with you. I mean, in the background it is. It's all about you. But it has nothing to do with you, right?
Would it be useful if we did like a quick, like use one of you all as a study to do like what would 3 pains be as a group? And then that might give you some better illustrations of this? Yes? Okay, who wants to go? Okay. So the idea here is we want to come up with, we said what, 3 themes? Okay, so Jen, walk us through this. I'm going to be you tell me what to do. This is Canopy Studios.
It's our company.
What do you do?
We build and support websites.
Okay.
Design, build, and support websites. That's just our generic.
Sure, no, it's fine.
And our buyer persona is the director of marketing at a kind of a corporate software Generally, they're a team of, usually small team, and we don't have any in-house development support. So that's our, kind of our person.
Why do they go to you?
Our current customers, because we were looking at our current customer profile, was Judy, and she works with us because we're super fast, and she wants to roll out all these campaigns and do all this stuff. And before, she was really hindered. She didn't have anybody to execute as fast as she was thinking. So we match and meet pace with her to execute a lot of her vision and design and retheme and.
Okay. So what would be it sounds like being fast and being more productive is of high value to her. That's correct. So would she maybe be looking for ways to improve efficiencies in all parts of her life? Is that like kind of part of who she is, ingrained as a person?
Yes.
Okay. So.
She wants to improve efficiency and look good, and like not only it shouldn't like work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Make her look good.
Yes.
She
So.
also probably knows more about what is needed, like these things, than anyone else in the company, and she can't get them to get it, right? So she can speak your language, probably, totally.
So a theme could be a theme could literally be around like productivity, and almost like you could actually have a campaign, like campaigns around like if you could clone yourself, right? So, what's that? If you could clone yourself, yeah, this is just top of head, right? Like how many times have I thought, like I'm probably your persona, how many times I thought, oh my gosh, like what are the hacks? So maybe the webinar that I go to are like the top 3 hacks to do 3 days worth of work in one day.
Yeah.
Right? So that's like that overarching event, but that's kind of the theme is really on kind of how do I do more?
Yeah.
3 in 1 is the theme.
Perfect.
3 days in 1.
What's her background? Has she worked in the agency space, or is she all like in-house? Because I think those are 2 different like birds you can branch. Because the people that have worked with agencies before will be there. They'll be, and then the ones that have just worked in-house, they're like, I know I need you, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah, we usually take care of both.
Right,
But
right.
this-
So,
this
but you
person
would
is
talk to them a little bit.
This
So it's
person is
in-house.
corporate,
Yeah.
so it's all in-house.
So this is a good example of like a theme. I wanted to unpack at least one to give you guys like a better mental. Is that helpful? To give you a mental model of a theme?
So it's like productivity, but more on a relatable level. Like if I could clone myself.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like making a case for her role in the organization, so it'd be like things about like what value does she provide to the rest of the team, and she could like give it to someone else. Like, look at
So
what we do.
could that be, like another theme could be get the credit you deserve?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're doing 3 days of work in a day, and nobody recognizes you for that. You're like, I'm busting my ass, and nobody seems to notice. Get the credit you deserve. Could be another theme that's around the persona of the person, not about the product, so to speak. Is that helpful? So do you feel like you could maybe start jotting down a couple of themes, and that will kind of put this pen to paper, even if it's pencil to paper, and then we can do some sharing? Did you have a question? Okay. All right, so let's do a couple minutes on that, and then we'll come back and share.
Perfect. So there'll be some kind of more homework because we're not going to have enough time to do everything that I wanted to, which is like the story of my life. So I just wanted to share this with you guys.
Hold on. Hey, everyone, up here, please.
So in my role selling marketing services, I'm often in a position where I'm like, I have to, and especially when people are really new to marketing, I have to like really spell it out for them. So this is one of our clients now, Bay Supply. They distribute fasteners and rivets, which is just the most exciting thing ever, right? I know. Actually, we were at the Inbound conference and Airstream was like majorly featured, and he was so excited. He was like, "That is a rivet on wheels. I want them as a customer." I'm like, "All right, let's try to make it happen."
Hold on, does it use AI?
Does not use AI. It's so funny. It's like they don't even make the rivets; they just distribute them. And by the way, their revenues are up 30%, and so they're really, really happy because no one in their industry is doing any of this digital marketing, inbound marketing stuff, right? So I was like, I just went to Google, was like, all right, I'm going to really confuse every algorithm out there and start looking up things about fasteners. And so I said, all right, your anchor content is going to be this buyer's guide to stocking alternative fastener brands. Because what I understood from him is a pain that he experienced was that people only wanted the name brands and they thought that the generic brands were not as good. But he's compensated on actually moving more product. So that's kind of the overarching piece of content, the consideration content. And the blog topics might be top 3 myths about alternative fastener brands, open end versus pop open rivets. What's the difference? I don't know. 5 tools I can't live without. Yeah, I have no idea. So distributors share their favorites. So if you think about it, these are all blog topics that are going to be ultimately sort of part of that ultimate buyer's guide. So you don't have to look at it like, oh my gosh, I have this huge mountain of work. You can think about kind of the big, that big piece of content that you're going to create this buyer's guide and all the different subsections you would have in it. And I say all the different, maybe there's 4, okay? And then you can actually pull the content right from that buyer guide, and you can convert that into blog content. Or in his case here, it's also like, hey, you've got distributors who we would love to be able to feature them. So you barely have to do anything. You just have to maybe ask them a couple of questions to get their answers and then publish that as a blog. So do you guys see how it's an overarching theme for a really boring industry, right? But it speaks to that buyer, that retail owner, and then the blog posts are supporting that ultimate consideration stage content.
If we're planning 3 to 4 months out, how do you recommend leaving space and time to be responsive to things that are happening, like legislation that may come into play that's relevant to you, or different things that are in major publications, like Time or whatever, that you can respond to in a really interesting way?
Mm-hmm.
How do you plan for that?
So that's kind of in addition to, right?
Do you plan for it? Do you leave gaps, or you just don't?
Sure, leave gaps, but there are no gaps in your life, right? So you're going to have to make time. You're going to have to weigh how important is this? And if it's really important, then you're going to have to put in the extra time to do it. I don't think it's you can't count on it supplementing your core strategy though.
So
this is your bread and butter.
Responsive content block, you would just keep your full schedule, and then if you need to work extra.
And you might have 4 blogs that that we consider too, right? So this is what we're not going to have time to do, but then it's just kind of taking it kind of that one step further. So thinking about, hey, here's the overarching piece of it, that anchor content, which typically is the harder piece to identify, and then what are the kind of micro posts that are going to relate to that piece of content. And then now, if you do this, then you literally have your editorial calendar. So if you actually just spend a little bit more time, right, later doing this, you should be able to map out all of your content that you're going to have for the next quarter. And the hardest part is actually committing to doing it, to actually writing it. So we know it doesn't grow on trees, right? So I suggest taking an all hands on deck approach. At Allbound, every single person in the company wrote, everyone. I don't care if you're an engineer, you're a salesperson, everyone wrote, okay? The other thing is to consume and review. Like you said, Melissa, one of our most successful pieces of content at Allbound was I went to someone else's conference and then I wrote kind of my take or the Allbound take on that event. And that was a highly visible piece of content. So it was the Rainmaker conference, and I was actually arguing against it. Like I was very provocative and was saying that the things that were being taught were wrong, and this is why they're wrong. So I had that kind of brand that was prepared to like put our neck out there.
Quick question.
Yep.
You said even engineers, right? So are you talking about specifically on like engineering things, or you're talking about like
On the things that the buyer persona cares about. So you might take it and it might be a little rough, and then you're going to fine tune it, or you're going to hire a freelancer or an intern to like kind of clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but something is going to be better than nothing.
I'd also like highly recommend, Mary Lou mentioned this about doing your emails and just like recording what you'd say and then transcribing what you record. Like even people that like to write, like I like to write and I have a hard time sitting down and focusing and writing. But what I found is like audio stuff, or you guys have seen me do videos and I'll just post those. I'm like, I can do like I can see in your case, like a legislation comes out and record a 2-minute video, and even either you post a video or you just record it, transcribe it, and that becomes a post. And the same with technical people. They're like, I ain't writing shit. I've got a code. They're like, cool, well, what if we could just book 15 minutes and I'll just ask you a bunch of questions. We'll just record the conversation. And you send it to rev.com, rev.com. It's $1 a minute to transcribe on rev.com. Super, super cheap. It's like ridiculously cheap, and it's really good transcriptions.
It's accurate. It's not like.
It's ridiculously accurate. It's really good. They turn it around in less than a day, and that becomes a rough cut blog post. Or even, look, a lot of, I don't know, you might have seen this, like a lot of times the content that is rough does better. Like if it's super polished, it was like, oh, it's a slick marketing thing. Like when I do videos sometimes, I'm like, oh shit, a truck just went by. And then I go back to the video. You've seen this, right? But it's like, it's more human, and people like it. So if it's like, hey, here's my 2-minute executive briefing on the latest legislation. Here's 3 things that I read this, and this is what I thought of right away. Just wanted to share that with everyone. Let me know what your thoughts are. Like, even if you don't have the time and the energy to do all this, just recording stuff and transcribing it, or sitting down with your team and recording that stuff, that can be a way with less friction to produce the content.
I'm going to add an amendment to what you suggested, because that works because your buyer persona appreciates the fact that you're a human being, and that if mud spilled on you during that time when the truck went by, that'd probably make them even happier, right? Because they're like, oh, he gets me, like this is my life. If you're selling to a CFO of an enterprise company, they might want something a little bit more polished. So you have to think about the audience, right?
Fair enough.
Okay. Yeah, so freelance and modify. If you there's so many there's freelancers out there. There's ways you can do quick recordings or put bullet points together, and then have someone else actually churn out the content for you. You'll probably have to modify it a little bit for your voice, but that's something that we did early on at Allbound before we hired an agency. And then when we really were when we had the money to spend, we just hired an agency to do it, right? Or you can hire someone to write content for you internally. And then it's getting really creative, like the videos. Content doesn't have to be like Scott said, that kind of polished final piece of written form. It can take many different shapes and sizes.
I'm seeing a lot of videos now, short videos on LinkedIn, with founders talking about what you just said. Yeah. Even instead of transcribing.
Yeah, I mean, even if you make it a habit of doing audio, almost like we post videos out there, you could do an audio, almost like a voicemail message. That's call it your executive briefing. The Can It Be executive briefing. The ScriptSwap executive briefing for today is, I saw this article, blah, blah, blah. This is what I thought about it. I wanted to post this and share this with as many people as possible. Boom. And you can use, there's all kinds of audio apps. Audio? Yeah, because you don't have to. I don't know if it performs better. I just find that it's really easy to produce because I can walk and talk, and they call it an executive briefing. It's like, hey, here's 2 minutes real quick. And then you could always transcribe it and use it for a post down the road.
You should transcribe it, and you should post it on your blog in writing, and then you can create graphics from it. Think back to the examples I showed you. Don't just do one thing. Make that one thing do at least 3 other things at the same time. And if you can't make that one thing be 3 things, maybe it's not the thing you should be doing, right? So you have to squeeze as much value out of every minute that you spend.
Can I also add to also look and see what your competitors are doing for content, so you're not posting the same stuff and that you're actually offering something unique out to the world.
just because there's so much content these days, you don't want to add to the knowledge, you want to add value.
Absolutely. And that's where you bring your brand promise and your brand personality, I think, to what you're creating.
And also don't, on the other hand, don't try to imitate, because like Patrick was saying yesterday with pricing, we spend like, oh, the competitors price this way, let's do it that way. You're assuming they've done the research. Just because you see competitors doing such and such content doesn't mean that content performs.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like it's not just like the CEOs that make the content that you want to make. Like if you're writing articles isn't really for you, but you love sharing, maybe creating a podcast. I mean, whatever you do, you should put yourself into it. But maybe it's a podcast and not the articles. Maybe it's something else that is more aligned with your style. But that's the struggle with I work with CEOs. They don't have time and they don't want. They know it's important. They don't. It's not maybe this is forcing something into like a square peg round.
Mm-hmm. The written content's important because it's how Google knows that you're authoritative, right? So,
Someone else can do that, right?
what's that?
So like if your whole team is doing things, if your whole team is writing today, someone else could be kind of powering that that part of the machine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just recommend getting everyone involved, tracking everything. If there's something that you're doing and it's not effective, it's not working, stop doing it. So build on what works and ditch the stuff that doesn't work, okay? I had arguments with our CEO. He was like, no, we have to keep doing, I'm like, no, look, it's not, like, I show him the data. Like, this isn't performing. Why are you, like, I only have so many hours in the day, right? So the data doesn't lie. And I just believe in just taking chances and being authentic. So there's a reason why people want to buy from your company versus a competitor. And it doesn't have to do, it has less and less and less to do with the actual product and more to do with the feeling that they get from you.
When we interviewed our customers to build our personas, the number one reason they chose to work with us was because of was the humans.
Mm-hmm.
They actually didn't really care much about anything else.
Yeah. They'll say it, like at the end, like they'll somewhere along the way there'll be some justification that they need to have, like, oh well, you've made these other people successful or what have you. But that's the nice to have. That's the cherry on top of the sundae. The ice cream that's there is they had a gut feeling, right? There was some kind of a connection, and I believe that like attracts like. And you're going to work really well with people who are very much in line with you. And so that's why I'm like, I don't know, like if you have that bold, you have a bold, provocative kind of approach, that's what's going to separate you from anybody else. Thank you.
So let's, I want to make sure you're capturing some takeaways before we let Jen go. So if you go to page 3, I want to give you 2 minutes. And just, if you go to page 3 under buyer personas, I want you to just capture a couple of insights or key action items that you can take out of here, and just even if they're super easy steps to start this project, then let's write those down to make sure that you capture them and get them to work. So we'll do that, and then we'll let Jen go. Cool. So let's do one quick round of sharing. I just want to make sure we're capturing these because there's so much info. I want to hear from at least 3 people. What's your number one either takeaway or action item coming out of here? Anne.
Add elevator pitches to our persona.
Add elevator pitches to our personas. Love it. Next. Next. Thank you.
Content that your personas care about as humans.
Content your personas care about as humans. What's next? Who's next? Let's do 3 more. We're on a roll. Anne.
Everything should be 3x distributed.
3x distributed. Love that one. Great takeaway. Zach.
Writing posts really focused on like the personal pain and not necessarily just a solution, but validating.
Yeah, love that. Let's do 2 more. Nice. Dude, that was awesome.
Throw quizzes in your content to get the
Quizzes in your content.
customer.
Yeah, cool. Allison?
Share the personas with the rest of the team so everyone knows who they're working towards.
Who they're building for and who you're helping. Yeah, love it. Cool. Awesome. So, I had a couple people ask if they could get a copy of the deck so we can get a copy of that. Is that correct? Cool. So we'll get that out to you. Question?
Yeah, so I So I want to be.
In the way.
Please don't hesitate to ask me, like to follow up with me, like email, LinkedIn, what have you. I'd be happy to offer some like kind of like more advice specifically to your business. I just took a look at the companies that were here. So
They're not here right now.
you guys find yourself here.
Well, Trevor. Yeah, for you.
Been in Nigeria for like 12 months.
It's so important. It kills me. This is so painful for me. Okay, so like big priority. All right.
Jeremy, zip time.
Just get rid of it. Just lose it because it just makes you look bad, right? So just kill it until you're ready. Okay.
And he has a team over here.
Okay.
Love the quiz.
Yep. You like make it interactive. Make them have to do something, right?
Katie,
Can I go back?
Yeah, no, you're good.
Clairvoyance. So when I got on your site, I was like bombarded with like things popping up. So just think about like the person, right, that you're speaking with.
Script swap, that's Melissa.
Yeah, because we only have our 2 press releases posted, nothing else.
But you have a bunch of ideas, so you're good. And then everybody else and everybody I mentioned, you guys need a CTA. You have these companies are writing blogs, but you have nowhere for them to go, or the only place you have them to go is an actual decision stage process, which is like talking to a salesperson or having a demo. So work on just building that one consideration stage piece of content, one piece of gated content, and then you can start actually monetizing the blog that you've been putting all of your heart, energy, and soul into.
Can you go back one? Sorry. I just wanted to see what the quiz thing, lead quizzes.
The quizzes, yeah. And something this is like an extra tidbit. So do 75% through the blog, add a text-based CTA, like really boring, just a line of text that actually clicks to the premium content, and then you can put something graphical at the bottom. We tested this internally, and our text-based, like inline CTAs are far outperforming our graphical pretty CTAs.
Say that one more time to make sure everybody got that.
So the 75% through your blog post, put a text-based call to action, right? Like, want to learn more about this? Click here to get da 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 da. That's far outperforming. I don't remember what the number is, but it's outperforming our graphical CTAs at the bottom of the blog. We still have those in case someone gets to the bottom of the blog, but the fact is that people they don't want to read that much. So
What is a graphical CTA?
like a button that's pretty, that's got like, it's been designed, somehow. So if you go to SmartBug Media's blog, you're going to see an inline CTA in the middle to 75% of the way through the blog, and then you're going to see a graphic, big old click here button at the bottom. Some people just want to be like, they don't want to click the graphical pretty thing because they know that you know that they've got you or something. I don't know. It's like it's mind games. Yeah.
No, if it looks suspicious, they're going to assume it's suspicious.
So sorry, the CTA is like a quiz or a sign up for a newsletter or?
It's a CTA is a call to action, and you should be giving them some kind of a value. So it'd be to a landing page with an ebook, or it could be to a quiz where you're going to get their quiz results, they have to give you their email address. It's the transaction that happens.
Cool. Valuable? Very. Yeah? Are you glad that Jen came from Phoenix to hang out with us? Yeah? Let's give Jen Spencer some love. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. So, that was awesome.